Good afternoon, David. Thank you very much for taking the time for this interview.
Thanks, Petra. Lovely to speak to you again.
And we just spent some time together in Zimbabwe, where you and your wife, Koala, were guiding us through an experience of a mindful safari. Can you please explain to your readers how mindfulness and safaris can really fit together?
Yes, absolutely. I was originally, or am originally from Zimbabwe, where I still am right now. I was born and raised here. And then later in life, I came to meditation for purely stress management reasons initially, but then increasingly began to learn about Buddhism and all the benefits that we can get from meditating. And later in life, I decided, wouldn't it be wonderful if I can bring together my two great passions, which are basically Africa on the one hand and meditation and mindfulness on the other. And that started about 2015. We had our very first mindful safari. And subsequent to that, very interestingly, a number of books have been published talking about the impact of being in nature and seeing how there are so many parallels between being in nature and meditation. Both of them are profoundly relaxing on us psychologically and physically, and both of them have so many different benefits to us, which are very similar. I just have found it really an increasingly wonderful journey of unfolding as more and more we discover the benefits of being outside in nature in a mindful state.
I totally agree. I was so relaxed after that safari. I can't tell you how. But getting back to mindfulness. What do you consider the most important in leading a mindful life?
I think before we can be mindful, we need to be aware. We need to have some level of self-awareness. There's that old adage that's sometimes used, you can't manage what you don't monitor. First of all, you need to monitor something in order to then take charge of it. So in that sense, when we're looking at our minds or focusing on our minds, I think it's really important to start to become aware of what our minds are actually doing in order to then more effectively manage them. And this is where meditation and mindful practices can really serve us so powerfully.
Yes, thank you. And now getting to your books. Your books are well loved all over the world for their unique ability to entertain as well as provide deep insight into, for example, Buddhism. What motivated you to write these books?
Well, I suppose I've been a scribbler since I was a little child, always keen to communicate things. And when I became so convinced of the benefits of meditation and Buddhism, I wanted to write about them. So that I did. I wrote an introductory book called Buddhism for Busy People back in 2004. And when I was busy promoting that, I discovered a number of people don't actually ever read nonfiction books. And typically they're very intelligent people. They could be lawyers or journalists or accountants who, when they go home at the weekends or go on vacation, what they want to do be taken out of themselves, be transported to a different time and place. And so I thought, how can I reach these people with these important messages, but not in a nonfiction context? And the answer really was quite simple. Yeah. As a storyteller myself, I thought, I'll write some fiction, some novels, and engage people that way. And so that was the start of my Buddhist or spiritual novel writing, if you like.
Yeah, wonderful. Yes. And specifically, because that's a book we at AquamarinVerlag are just publishing, what motivated you to write your new book, Instant Karma? How did you come up with the characters in the book, and what is your main message you want to convey?
Karma, of course, is one of the fundamental concepts in Buddhism, and a lot of us in the West understand the notion of what goes around comes around. It's not that much different from do to others as you'd have them to do to you. But I asked myself, why is it that most people do not actually believe in karma, or actually their actions don't show that they are actually embodying karma? And the reason is very, very simple, and that is that karma is not instant. If karma was instant, we would all be very, very diligent in making sure that we never did anything that was in any way negative towards others, and we'd ensure to do as many positive things as we could, because there'd be an almost instant payoff. And so in my book, Instant Karma, the day it happened, we wake up one morning, and anytime we do anything positive, we get a positive result within like quarter of an hour, and similarly anything negative. And so the fun part of this roller coaster ride through the day is to see how long does it take for people to cotton on to what's actually happening, and overall, what is the impact on human behavior of instant karma. And I don't think I'm telling any stories out of turn to say that basically, if instant karma was a thing in a very short space of time, we'd all become the most loving, wonderful people to be around, because we'd be focusing all our time and attention on giving other people what we most want ourselves.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? So, but tell us, in general, where do you get your inspiration for your books?
I guess all the ideas that I have come from my teachers, my lamas. I often sit in a temple listening to teachings, and I feel like a temple thief because I'm sitting there scribbling notes thinking, this would make a great idea for a story or a novel or whatever. So it really comes from them. I meditate very regularly, a couple of times a day, and I feel that from that space of open state, if you like, that's when also the ideas kind of coalesce and come into view, and new opportunities and possibilities emerge. So I feel having an inspiring spiritual mentor and having a regular meditation practice, for me, are really useful to help inspire the creative process.
Wonderful, yeah. So let's go to think about the method. When you begin writing a book, do you have a certain method you use? Do you, for example, meditate before sitting down, or have another ritual you do before you start writing?
Yes, I guess it depends on the story of the book itself. Sometimes it's just a single idea, like instant karma, that seizes my imagination, and I start thinking of all the different ways in which instant karma might manifest. In other cases, it's like a cast of characters, which I like to return to, and people like accompanying me on that journey. Yeah. For example, in The Magician of Lhasa and The Secret Mantra, we have the same characters from one book to the next. So, but in different cases, I guess it's different ways, but always consistently is this importance to me of meditation. And I will always very specifically, ask the blessings, the inspiration of all gurus, Buddhas, and bodhisattvas, especially my precious lineage lamas, to use me as a conduit to get the Dharma out to as many people as powerfully as possible. That's my greatest wish.
Wonderful. So, David, we would also like to know how you found your own spiritual path in the world. How did Buddhism come into your life?
It's one of these curious things, the short answer to that is karma, because I created the cause in a previous lifetime to come to this one. But in this particular lifetime, I began meditating because I had an allergic reaction to stress. I was coming up in hives, rashes. And I learned, somebody said to me, your problem, David, is you are systemically stressed. You need to learn how to meditate. And so I did. And within a short period of time, I discovered it was really working. Once I had had a bit more enthusiasm for my meditation practice, which evolved over a period of time, I decided to start attending classes. And when I found my own Lama, my own teacher, I had a real profound sense of heartcoming, of homecoming, a sense of this is where I belong.
So, and what do you believe makes Buddhism important in today's world?
There are so many different benefits. I think, first of all, many people their minds are fragmented, they're agitated, they're stressed out, they're strung out, whatever metaphor you like. And Buddhism has a wonderful toolbox, if you like, of psychological techniques, which you can take on board whether you're not interested in Buddhism per se. As the Dalai Lama himself often says, our purpose is not to convert people to Buddhism, it's to give people tools to be happier. So I think that's the first thing that's important. It's the techniques we can apply to all of us, wherever we are in our lives and whatever we're doing. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I think in an increasingly secular age, the fact is that Buddhism is not a theistic tradition. There's no belief in a God. or need to worship a god. Rather, it's about understanding the true nature of our own minds for ourselves. And I think more and more people find that an attractive proposition. So I think those two things, basically the useful techniques and also the profound insights into the nature of reality and our own minds, these are two very complementary parts of the Buddhist offering that I think are appealing to many people around the world.
I really like the idea of that spiritual toolbox. I can relate to that very much.
Good.
So, David, can you tell us who the spiritual leaders are that admire you most?
Gosh, well, that's very easy, I suppose, because they are my teachers. They're not necessarily people who are very famous or well known, but they are my teachers, and it's from them I have learned everything. In Buddhism, we have this view that our teacher is actually kinder to us than the historical Buddha, which some people think, oh, that sounds very sacrilegious. Can you really say that? But the fact is, Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, does not show up every Wednesday evening and deliver classes at my local temple. But my teacher, Liz Shea, does. And so in that respect, he is kinder to me than the historical Buddha. Of course, the inspiration goes all the way back to Shakyamuni. But our own teachers are the people from whom we learn these life-changing, life-enhancing skills and practices and insights. And therefore, they, to me, are my greatest heroes. Of course, I admire the Dalai Lama, and I had the good fortune to be on an organizing committee when he visited Australia once, so I got to meet him. But it was a fleeting meeting. It lasted, a short period of time. Whereas from my lamas, I have a far deeper, more useful and life-enhancing relationship.
Thank you. So let's go now maybe to the animal kingdom. In several of your books, cats play an important role. Do cats have a personal meaning to you?
Absolutely. Among my very first memories is the charcoal face and blue eyes of our cat's Pandy, who my parents bought for my older brother when they brought me home from the maternity hospital, so that he didn't get jealous of all the attention that would be focused on number two. That was me. That was the first memories that I actually have of anything as Pandy. I've always had cats in my life, and more recently, I found that cats, but in particular, have quite a strong affinity for meditation. In fact, my most recent cat, Kalua, used to walk between me and my computer screen in the middle of the afternoon when she felt it was time that I got off my bottom and went and sat in the meditation cushion, because she'd love to join me, and she'd sit and purr, especially when I said a particular mantra, which is interesting. So I do feel that cats, I do feel a great affinity for cats. But for all animals, frankly, I mean, I love animals, but I think cats have a particular, the meditation resonates with them. They're very happy to be with a person who is meditating. Whereas I think many dogs, for example, if you're not giving them your attention, they kind of get bored and they walk off. So that's why I have this particularly fond relationship with cats.
Oh, that's really nice. Thank you. I have one more question about a book that we are working on at AquamarinVerlag and which is very dear to my heart. And that's a book about the medicine Buddha. So the concept and reality of the medicine Buddha seems to be very important to you. Can you please elaborate on what the medicine Buddha can add to our Western lives?
Well, in a nutshell, in the West, we are entirely focused on the external, on the material fix. So if anything goes wrong, we're off to the doctor, we want a pill, we want surgery, we want radio treatment, we want chemicals or whatever. We want to fix things using external apparatus or mechanisms. In the Eastern world, everything's the other way around. We look at the inner causes and the inner conditions that we can reshape to achieve a different outcome. And so nobody is, and I'm certainly not saying that we should turn away from Western medicine, which is incredibly powerful and useful. But what I am saying is that rather than fighting an illness with one hand, why not fight it with both? And so let's employ our minds as well as the physical tools that are available to us from our doctors. Why not employ our minds to help? I mean, everyone knows that the placebo effect is responsible for about 30 to 40% of healing, perhaps even more. And so Our minds have the most extraordinary capacity for healing. And what I love about Medicine Buddha practice is it gives us a very specific set of tools which we can take and apply to ourselves, which will help bring our minds in alignment, and if you like, our subconscious minds in alignment with our conscious wishes for healing. So Medicine Buddha has many, many different benefits, not least of which it helps us to cope with the stress of being ill. For example, I had cancer some years ago, and practicing Medicine Buddha helped me deal with the stress of having that cancer in such a way that I wasn't particularly troubled by it at all. I think it also, though, helped me with the actual physical recovery from that. And many people have found the same thing. The most remarkable healing, both psychological and physical, can occur when we take these practices, which have been around for thousands of years, and apply them to ourselves. They're not difficult. They make perfect sense, and they really give us a place to focus and give us mental resources to add to the physical ones when we are contemplating a recovery from illness.
Sounds very important to me. Anyways, so do you have anything else you would like to share with the readers of your books in the German-speaking part of Europe?
I would love to, Petra, because I really do appreciate the wonderful support that my German readers have shown me over quite some time. And there's one very simple little tool to help us derive even greater happiness from happiness-creating situations, which is when we're enjoying happiness, like we might be listening to a beautiful piece of music, enjoying a cup of coffee, looking at a beautiful view, perhaps from a mountain or wherever. We often are pretty good at just appreciating that for what it is. But there's a Buddhist insight that can help us make that even better, which is to recognize that not everybody sipping that cup of coffee, looking at that view, or listening to that piece of music would be deriving happiness from it. It's not actually coming from the music itself. It's coming from us, our minds, that are apprehending, that are perceiving a happiness-creating cause. And the only reason that our minds are doing that is because in the past, we have created a virtue, which is a cause of happiness. We have created a virtue which enables us to be happy. So the first step is to say, I'm really enjoying this, how wonderful it is, but it's not actually coming from the perceived source. It's not just from the music or just from the scene. So it's actually coming from my mind. Yeah. And when we appreciate it's coming from my mind, from a previously created cause I've created, that makes us even happier, because I think that I've actually created this for me to enjoy, and how wonderful is that? And so if you like, it's like an accelerant for our own happiness when we recognize that. And the third step in this process is to think, wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody out there in the world could also have the sense of bliss, this happiness that I'm feeling right now? So it's like a three-step process: recognizing the true cause of whatever it is we're enjoying, being grateful or happy that we've done it, and wishing it for others too. And I feel that's a very simple thing we can all do on a daily basis, and it really does help us even amplify, magnify, maximize the happiness that is available to us.
Thank you very much, David. I think that's a good plan for all of us to have. And of course, I and our readers as well hope to see you soon here in Europe. Thank you.
I would love to come over. Thank you so much, Petra. Thanks for the interview.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.